No matter who you are, you need friendship in some capacity. How you go about it is your business, but most people find their friends through common interests. Since I'm not most people, I've always found friends by building my entire personality around the interests of other people, which was, of course, a super healthy thing for a developing human to do. In kindergarten, making friends was easy because you could just go up to somebody and be like, "Hey, your mom packed you fruit snacks? That's awesome, mine did too. You want to go play on the jungle gym with me and we can trade with each other for our favorite flavors?" Boom, friendship made and double lemon flavored fruit snacks all in one fell swoop. Once you start climbing that grade school social ladder in second grade or so, things get a little more political. "Okay, you didn't get the same light up Scooby-Doo backpack with matching lunchbox that I got? Should have known you were a snake in the grass. Shame on you and your entire family, you filthy heathen." Since I already had trouble making friends anyways because of my off-the-wall questions and just being a little bit disruptive in general, it was around this point in time that I started falling into the ever-present people-pleaser trap. Pretty much, I would just jump on whatever bandwagon the friends I did have were already on. I don't really remember all the things I pretended to like because there were so freaking many of them, but I do remember one in particular simply because it was the single most annoying concept I'd ever heard up to that point. It's a game with metal cards that you roll a little ball over, and the moment a magnet on the ball hits the card, it opens into a tiny little robot creature or man depending on what character you had. The best way I can figure out why anyone would think that this was a good idea was that someone took the coolest parts of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And tried to combine them. Before you watch any further, if you haven't seen Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh!, first off, you're missing out. They're both huge parts of my childhood, and I would recommend both to anyone wanting a huge dose of pure nostalgia. Second, there's spoilers ahead for both, so be warned. Okay, now that's taken care of, let's keep this train chugging along. In Yu-Gi-Oh! You have these ultra-impressive mythical beast dudes whose essence is trapped in playing cards like a bunch of little sleeper agents just waiting to attack. I was in love with the idea that only a select few people with the Millennium items even had a clue about what was going on, and everyone else was just casually walking around with beasts of untold power tucked neatly in their pocket. It was made even cooler that we all gradually found out that the cards were more than just cards as the series went on, rather than it just being like, "Oh, by the way, these cards are magic. Okay, bye." Pokemon, on the other hand, was cool because there were these cute little animals that lived in a little red and white ball, and as you built up a friendship with them and battled them, they gained skill and became these impressive, powerful animals. I think the thing I loved most about Pokemon was the whole bond factor between the trainer and creatures, which was kind of missing in Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, they had the whole heart of the cards thing where you should respect their power and they were actual beings, but it's not like they would hold on just a bit longer or fight just a bit harder because they genuinely cared about you. They had set stats and power levels, except for Exodia, but he doesn't count. The creator of Bakugan must have just watched both shows one day and thought, what if the monster was the ball? That'd really be something, wouldn't it? To be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure what the mechanics of the game were supposed to be. There could have been a huge overarching plot that just explained why the ball was the monster and how the cards played into it, but I didn't care enough to look into it. All you Bakugan fans out there, if there's some bigger thing where it's got a cool story going on in the background, let me know. I'm willing to give it a second chance, I just haven't seen a reason to yet. You might think the way I talk that I got into Pokemon first and picked up Yu-Gi-Oh! Later, but you'd be wrong. I actually got into Yu-Gi-Oh! On my own because it was one of the cartoons that aired every Saturday morning for those of us willing to wake up at 8 a.m. to watch them, which was pretty much everyone back then. Believe it or not, on the weekends there were only a couple of channels playing cartoons because they shared airtime with the news networks. Unless you had cable, but only one of my friends had it, so I'm not going to count cable. I still remember the first time I saw any form of Pokemon. It was when a guy I knew brought his cards in and was going through them at recess one day. I was kind of sitting there frustrated, because I figured it'd be like Bakugan. A rip-off of Yu-Gi-Oh! I'd have to pretend to like to appease the third-grade friendship gods. When I saw this guy in the deck. What in the blue eyes white dragon is this? A giant tiger dog with a spiky lion mane that breathes fire? Maybe there is enough room in my heart for Yu-Gi-Oh! And this game. The guy explained how the whole concept worked, and I got more and more excited with every word. I thought it was especially cool that at the bottom of every card there was a neat little fact about the creature, not just what the special monster ability was like with Yu-Gi-Oh! As the year went on, the Pokemon hype train kept picking up momentum with me and my friends until we liked it even more than Yu-Gi-Oh! We all still liked Yu-Gi-Oh!, just Pokemon hit different. As the end of the school year got closer, we all started making a plan to do odd jobs around our neighborhoods for pocket money so we could each buy some cards and trade them when school started back up. I held up my end of our little agreement as much as I could. I mean, there's only so many ways a 10-year-old can earn some summer cash, and the couch goblins would have probably declared war if I dug my hands between the cushions one more time. But I had a nice little card fund and headed off to claim my prize. In the end, I think I saved up enough to buy 2 of the little tins that used to be like $10 and then a few booster packs, so I had a decent collection. It was really hard to contain my excitement about seeing what my friends managed to get, and I couldn't wait to show them all what I'd traded one of the neighborhood kids for a few days into summer with some of the cards that my parents had gotten me as sort of an end-of-the-school-year treat. Look how supportive they were, helping me be a little nerd. It just warms the soul, doesn't it? The card was a Japanese Alakazam, and it was the jewel of my collection, my pride and joy. The stats of the card probably weren't even that good, and I can guarantee that it wasn't worth the 3 level X cards I traded for it. Remember those? But to all of us, having a Japanese Pokemon card was about as good as having a piece of gold, so I was ecstatic. When the first day of school rolled around, I asked my mom if I could go a bit early to meet up with my group. When I found them, I ripped my backpack open and took out my precious Alakazam and waited for them to start freaking out that one of us actually managed to get such a cool card, when that definitely didn't happen. They immediately started to make fun of me, saying how much of a nerd I was and a bunch of other, not so fun things. And I actually thought that they were messing around at first, so I kind of played along and figured we'd be back to goofing off by the next recess. Well, that never happened either, so hopefully this animation thing pans out because my career as a fortune teller is definitely not off to a good start. Of our group, the 2 that didn't move away kept treating me like a freak all the way through high school, and I should also add that after that day I literally never mentioned Pokemon or really anything I was interested in at school ever again. It even got to the point where I gave away my cards to someone in my family, which, I regret now, but I just felt not so good at the moment and wasn't really happy with the franchise. Don't get me wrong, I still loved Pokemon, but I was kind of trying to keep my little hobby a secret so I could never talk to anybody about how excited I was for the announcement of new releases or when a new generation came out, so I just assumed that I would have to get rid of it and move on. For the first little bit that I was at my unit, I didn't really say much and I kept to myself because in my head I was just like, if I say anything, they'll know I'm just a nerd and my whole work life will be miserable and I'll have to eat by myself and never have friends and die alone. When I went on my first field problem, I was put in a truck with the absolute biggest mountain of a man that I've ever met in my life, who looked like he could flick me and break every bone in my body if he wanted to. Well, I'm in trouble. We got on the road a bit later, and he looked at me, and then looked at his bag, and then looked back at me, and just whipped out a Nintendo Switch and was like, "Hey man, you ever play Pokemon?" After picking my jaw up off the floor, we started talking, and come to find out he was an even bigger nerd than I was. During the ride out to the training grounds, we talked about all kinds of stuff, from movies to comics, and of course Pokemon, but while we talked, I came to an important realization. This guy was the exact image of someone that wouldn't be into this kind of nerdy stuff, yet he was pretty out in the open about it, and he still had everyone's respect. I'm sure it had a lot to do with the fact that he could probably take on the whole base and win, but seeing him not get bullied for the same things that I did gave me a little bit of hope that it might be different here. I kind of loosened up a bit after that when I was around him, but I was still guarded with everyone else for the most part. A while later, the sergeant that's now in charge of me gave me a ride to the building that we'd be working out of so that I could meet my platoon, and I noticed that he had a little Arceus figure on his dash. I said that it was pretty cool, and he just looked at me dead in the eye with the most serious expression ever on his face, and he was like, "Yeah, he's there to protect me." Since then, I've talked to them both about Pokemon quite a bit, and it's gotten to the point where the majority of the people I work with know that I like it, horror movies, animation, and a bunch of other stuff too. I've also noticed that something surprising has come out of this that I didn't expect. It actually seems like people get along with me better now. Like, me being a bit of a nerd has shown them that I'm not just a super serious person all the time. You don't even have to like the same things as someone to find common ground. One of the sergeants that I work with is super into a game called Warhammer. My first time being on a guard shift with him, he was working on one of his little figures, and I started asking him about it because he had put some sort of weathering effect on it, and I was curious about it. He ended up showing me a book of lore about his troops, and the sheer amount of information in front of me was like holding a magnet to a computer. I just couldn't for the life of me grasp it all. Even though I never got into the game myself, it's become a pretty regular thing that when he's on guard shift with me, or I just happen to go into that area during my time off while he's there, we'll sit there and talk about what color schemes would look cool, or how he can add little bits of detail to prep for his sets when he has matches. Even though we have different interests, we found a common ground that's led to some pretty relaxing conversations for the both of us. At the end of the day, if you can take anything from this, I hope it's just that you deserve friends who want to hang out with you because of who you are as a person, not because you like the same things as them. It's been a while, hasn't it? I hope there won't be another break like this for a long time. Keep an eye out. I'm super excited about my next animation, and I hope that you'll all like it too.